Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is USA Global TV and Radio. We provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I'm thrilled to welcome you today to the United Kingdom News and Culture. And this is episode 90. Can you imagine? Thanks for taking this ride with us, literally. Our show today is going to be filled with fun facts and information. And we have an incredible person who's with us, one of our expert correspondents. His name is Simon MacDonald. He's joining us from the United Kingdom. And he is an expert correspondent in so many areas. Today, he's going to enlighten us in one of those. He is a celebrity chef. He has made meals for some of the presidents of the United States, for the royal family, and I'm waiting for him to make it for me very soon. He's also a TV presenter, and he has extensive experience when it comes to the fisheries and many other areas. Let's welcome Simon MacDonald. Hello.
Hello, it's lovely to be back again. I missed last week. It was, it was an empty week somehow for me, but there we are. But yes, the 90th birthday today. Goodness gracious, and we should have had a cake. But there we are. It's a privilege to have been with the show really right since the start of it. So 90, my goodness, I'm just catching up on my age now, I think.
Well, we must be doing something right. We don't look 90, thank goodness.
No, definitely.
It's definitely been an evolution on this platform from Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn to where we are today. So thank you, Simon, for being here from the very beginning. And we want to say a big hello to our other team members, DIANN, FLOYD, BOEHM, and HELENA, CHARD. We miss you and look forward to having you back. And Simon, I know you have a lot of information about a specific area that I think is fascinating. But before we get to that, you have extensive experience in the television and media industry. Can you share a little bit more with our audience about that?
Oh, this just harks back to more of my culinary days. And I invited down to, because it was actually the start of it all. I had a food smoking business in the West Highlands of Scotland, in a very remote area. And when I say remote, it would cost me 2 gallons of petrol just to go and buy 1 gallon of gas. And it was that same distance to get to the nearest bank or supermarket or filling station, whatever. So it was a remote place, but the business, I grew it, built it up, and we supplied basically from Beverly Hills in the west to Tokyo in the east in the end. Our customer base included 5 royal households, including our own. We had 3 US presidents on the list and so on as well. So because I started doing unusual things, not just smoked salmon like everybody does, but I started developing a smoked cream cheese, because all the books say it's impossible to do smoked cream cheese. So if somebody says it's impossible, I go for it. And so that worked. It worked very well. In fact, we won the best international cheese in France in 1996. So I was very proud of that one, and taught the French a thing or two about cheeses. Of course, they were famous for their cheeses. But anyway, the business, it grew with unusual products, including all the way from America. I brought in fresh alligator meat, and I started smoking alligators in the west of Scotland. And then that grew into then going on to smoking ostriches and kangaroos. And so basically, if it breathed, it would get smoked. And that was it. So television became quite interested in these curious products. And I did quite a few newsy programs and items. And then one of the popular morning breakfast shows that was screened for a good long run, good number of years. And I was invited to go down and do a show with them. So that went down all right. And then they said, well, would you come back and do 6 weeks? Because our guest chef, normal chef, is actually going to be away on filming somewhere else in the world. So that was it. So I had a 6-week stint doing that. And then that got picked up by another television station. I went on to doing their one, which is a very popular one in the UK called This Morning, by Richard Madley and Judy Finnegan. And I'll never forget my first show with them. The old adage, never do anything with children, with animals on television. Well, we had in the studio a live alpaca, which is a bit like a llama on a slightly smaller scale. And it was, it was a bit incontinent, shall we say, as well. There's quite a small studio. So in one corner, they had this piece going on about the alpaca, and I had the kitchen area there, and I was getting all prepped up and ready for it. And of course, you're all mic'd up and ready to go. And I was watching in the monitors around the corner of my eye, and they had a close-up of the head of this alpaca, and it had a cheeky little smile on its face. And the girl who had the alpaca in the studio was saying, well, they're very friendly, and if they're happy, they hum a little song. So I went like that, and the floor manager came running over and said, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Apparently my mic was live at the time, so I was doing the voiceover for an alpaca, my great claim to fame. So yes, it was an interesting day in the studio as that one. And one of the dishes I was doing actually went a little bit wrong as well. Sauce was a bit thin, it sprayed all over the place. Such as the joys of live television. So they kept me on, as I say, did 6 weeks, and then Channel 4 with their program, The Big Breakfast, took me on again for about 6 weeks. And so the saga went on. So I got more and more television work, and it was detracting so much from my business with the smokehouse as well. So I'm trying to split my time between the two places. But I certainly notched up some air miles and so on back and forward from London to the West Highlands, which was quite an adventure of a journey in itself. So that was it. So that's how it all started on the media trail.
Wow, I didn't know a lot of that. That is really interesting. And it just goes to show, I mean, it's not like anyone handed it to you. You had to work for it. You had to put yourself out there. And I think that's great, as our show is about hope and inspiration. So we're going to get into our topic today. But for anybody out there who'd like to be a television presenter, I know that you've done a testimonial here with Roll on it, but what would you recommend for somebody who's thinking to themselves, I don't know, I want to make it, but I'm not there yet?
Yeah, that's a $64 million question. I mean, a lot of it is sheer luck, be the right place at the right time with a really innovative and different idea. And if you get picked up, you get picked up. Start off contacting your local newspapers and your local press. Get a reputation for yourself. Get a name for yourself. And you can't be shy. You've really got to be out there and go for it. And if you make a mistake, so what? It's live television. I mean, there's another day. So that's it. And you just hope they'll invite you back again. So yeah, a lot of it's luck. But it's being able to project your voice. The key thing is don't speak too quickly, and that is probably the golden rule, because I see so many people who, when you speak to them face to face, they can speak at their normal rate, which might be quite quick, and yeah, that's fine face to face. But when it comes over on television, you've got to just slow it down a little bit and speak clearly. If you make a mistake, so what? That's it. Just go for it and enjoy it.
Slow it down and have a smile. I like that. Very good direction and advice. So I know that you have spent a lot of time preparing for the topic for today. So we've got some visuals, and I'm going to turn the screen over to you to guide us.
Right. Well, I mean, today I'm still doing obviously on the Scottish theme because that is where I am. Incidentally, before I get started and so on, we've had a beautiful day here. The sun is shining, and I know down the south of England, Hampshire, even into London, they've got this amber weather warning for torrential rain, flooding, and all the rest of it. Here in Scotland, we're basking in sunshine. Hard frost last night that we woke up this morning and it was a white world outside, but beautiful. And it's a lovely, lovely day. So there we are. So Scotland is, I did a piece a couple of weeks ago on, inventions and, and discoveries made in Scotland. And one of them was very closely connected with the shipping world, the shipbuilding world. So I thought, right, yes, I know a shipyard, which is probably the most famous shipyard in the world because it's given the world 3 queens. And it's got a fascinating history behind it. So I thought, yeah, I'll just have a wee look into this. And I became quite fascinated by it all. So the Scottish birthplace of the most famous ships in the world is the John Brown Company of Clydebank near Glasgow on the River Clyde. And it was a Scottish marine engineering and shipbuilding firm. It built many notable and world-famous ships, including the RMS Lusitania, the RMS Aquitania, then battleships like HMS Hood and HMS Repulse, and then the liners, the great liners are nearer today, the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, and more recently the Queen Elizabeth, or the QE2, as everybody affectionately knows her. So at its height from 1900 to the 1950s, it was one of the most highly regarded and internationally famous shipbuilding companies in the world. But however, thereafter, along with other UK shipbuilders, John Brown found it increasingly difficult to compete with the emerging shipyards in Eastern Europe and the Far East as well. In 1968, John Brown's merged with other Clydeside shipyards to form the Upper Clyde Shipbuilders Consortium, but that collapsed in 1971. So the company then withdrew from shipbuilding, but its engineering arm remained successful in the manufacture of industrial gas turbines. So in 1986, it became wholly owned by a subsidiary of Trafalgar House, which in 1996 was taken over by Caverna. The latter closed the Clydebank Engineering Works in 2000. But going back to the beginning of it all, 2 brothers, James and George Thompson, founded the engineering shipbuilding company J&G Thompson, and they opened the Clydebank Iron Shipyard in 1851 and launched their first ship, Jacalyn, in 1852. They quickly established a reputation in building prestigious passenger ships and building the Jura for Cunard in 1854 and the record-breaking Russia in 1867. Several of the ships built were bought by the Confederacy for blockade running in the American Civil War. And this included the CSS Robert E. Lee and the Fingal, which was later converted to the ironclad Atlanta. The rapid growth of the shipyard and the building of housing for workers resulted in the formation of a new town, which took its name from the shipyard which gave birth to it, Clydebank. In 1899, the steelmaker John Brown and Company of Sheffield bought J.G. Thompson's Clydebank Yard for £923,255, a considerable amount of money in those days. John Brown himself, he was actually born in Sheffield of Scottish descent in 1816. And he was the son of a slater. His father wanted him to become a draper, but John Brown had some slightly more grandiose ideas. So in 1848, Brown developed and patented the conical spring buffer for railway carriages, which was very successful, and it's still used on railway carriages and trains today. So his next move was to examine the iron cladding used in French warships, and he decided that he could do better. Good Scots blood. So in 1863, he was the first to roll 12-inch or 300 millimeter armor plate for warships. And by 1867, his ironcladding was being used on the majority of Royal Navy warships. And by then, his workforce had grown to over 4,000, and his company's annual turnover was almost £1 million, or 1.2 million US dollars. So in the early 1900s, the company innovated marine engineering technology through the development of the Brown-Curtis turbine. These engines' performance impressed the Admiralty, which consequently ordered many of the major Royal Navy warships from John Brown. The first notable order was for the battlecruiser HMS Inflexible, followed by the battlecruisers HMAS Australia and HMS Tiger, and the battleship HMS Barham. The Clydebank also became Cunard Line's preferred shipbuilder, building its flagship liners, the RMS Lusitania and the RMS Aquitania. Prior to construction commencing on the Lusitania in 1904, the shipyard was recognized to accommodate her so that she could be launched diagonally across the widest part of the River Clyde, where it met a tributary. The ordinary width of the river was actually only 610 feet compared to the 786-foot long ship. So in addition, the company spent £8,000 to dredge the Clyde, another £6,500 on the new gas plant, another £6,500 on new electrical plant, £18,000 to extend the dock, and £19,000 for a new crane capable of lifting 150 tons, as well as £20,000 in additional machinery and equipment. Now, all that totaled up to a heck of a lot of money. And in those days, you're talking hundreds of millions of pounds. However, by the early 1900s, Clydebank works had expanded to over 80 acres, consisting of the east and west yards, which were separated by a fitting out basin, where once launched hulls were fitted out with the aid of two cranes, each capable of 150 tons. One of those cranes still exists today, phenomenal tourist attraction. The east yard contained 5 building slipways, each of which could accommodate the building of the largest battleship, with one slip long enough to build a ship of over 900 feet. And the west yard was used for building smaller ships, such as destroyers. But throughout the First World War, the company employed on average 10,000 workers, so that this company grew very quickly, and many of whom were women, as their menfolk were fighting overseas. Now, this time, the company was almost exclusively occupied in building warships, with the exception of the battle cruisers HMS Repulse and HMS Hood, who was later sunk with an explosion in the magazine. This warship building was concentrated on destroyers. So by the end of the war, it had built more destroyers than any other British shipyard and set records for their building, with HMS Simoom taking 7 months from keel laying to departure. HMS Scythe took 6 months, and HMS Scotsman 5.5 months. So the company estimated that during the entire war period, it had produced a total of 205,430 tons of shipping. That's a lot of shipping. So between the First and Second World Wars, 3 great ships kept the shipyard busy, and one was the RMS Empress of Britain, and I actually remember seeing her in the Clyde, showing my age again. And then the giant Cunard White Star liners, the RMS Queen Mary and the RMS Queen Elizabeth, were again came off the slipways there as well. And the Queen Mary, of course, now resides at Long Beach in California. Sadly, the Queen Elizabeth caught fire in Hong Kong harbor, and her remains are still reclining on their side there to this day. So although Glasgow's history as a major shipbuilding city made it a prime target for the German Luftwaffe during World War II, despite the Clydebank Blitz, where there was a higher tonnage of bombs dropped there than there was in the London Blitz and London itself. While the yard made valuable contribution to the Second World War, building and repairing many battleships, including the notable and highly successful HMS Duke of York. In the first few years after the war saw a sudden reduction in warship orders, but it was balanced by a prolonged boom in merchant shipping to replace the tonnage lost during the war. And the most notable vessels built in this period were the RMS Caronia and the Royal Yachts Britannia. By the end of the 1950s, however, shipbuilding in other European nations and in Korea and Japan was newly recapitalized and had become highly productive by using new methods such as modular design. And at Clydebank, the company tendered for a series of break-even contracts, most notably the liner Kungsholm, in hope of surviving the competition and maintaining production in anticipation of a new high-profile contract from Cunard for a new liner. However, due to rising costs and inflationary pressures, the company suffered a major unforeseeable losses, sadly. But by the mid-1960s, John Brown and Company's management warned that the shipyard was uneconomic and risked closure. Its last Royal Navy order was for the Fearless-class landing platform dock HMS Intrepid, which was launched in 1964 and underwent trials and commissioning in 1967. Then the final passenger liner order eventually came from Cunard, and that was for the QE2. In 1968, the yard merged into the Upper Clyde Shipbuilders, but this consortium collapsed in 1971, and the last ship to be built at the yard, the Clyde-class bulk grain carrier, Ailsa, was completed in 1972. So in 1972, UCS's liquidator sold the Clydebank yard to Marathon Manufacturing Company, then Union Industrielle d'Entreprise, or UIE, from France, who bought the yard in 1980, using it to build semi-submersible rigs for the North Sea oil fields. UIE closed the yard in 2001. The commercially successful John Brown engineering division of the company, which made pipelines and industrial gas turbines, continued to trade independently until 1986, when the industrial conglomerate Trafalgar House took it over. In 1996, Caverna bought Trafalgar House, and it was later split, with Caverna retaining some assets, including Clydebank-based John Brown Engineering. But finally, in 2002, the world's most famous shipyard closed for the last time, marking the end of an era when 1 in 5 ships that sailed the seas was actually Clyde built, and most of those came out of John Brown's yard. The comprehensive regeneration plan for the site is being implemented now by Western Bartonshire Council and Scottish Enterprise. And this includes making the Clydebank waterfront more accessible to the public, and restoration of the historic Titan crane was completed in 2007. The famous Titan crane was the first electrically operated heavy lift crane capable of lifting 150 tons and was the biggest in the world at its time. It's built by Sir William Arrol and Company for the shipyard. A new campus for Clydebank College was opened in August 2008, and regeneration plans also include improved infrastructure, modern offices, a light industrial estate, new housing, and retail and leisure facilities. It was hoped that as part of the plan, the QE2 would be returned to the city and the river where she was built. But on 18th of June 2007, Cunard Line announced that it should be sold to Dubai as a floating hotel. So thereby lands another tale. But with the regeneration work in the Clydebank yard now, it is overlooked and overseen by this enormous crane, the Titan crane. So there we are.
That's amazing, Simon. What an incredible history.
It's an amazing history there. The Clyde shipbuilding is, as I say, one in 5 ships in the world was built on the Clyde at that time. It was an incredible heritage. Now most of the ships are built overseas. There are 2 ships being built on the Clyde at the moment for Caledonian Brains Ferry Services, which have run way over budget. I mean, 3-4 times over budget now. The launch date's been put back and put back and put back. But they're sadly the last 2 passenger vessels being built on the Clyde at the moment. And I believe there is still warship being built up at BAE Systems further up in the Clyde, actually next door to where the John Brown Engineering Shipyard was. So it's the Clyde is renowned the world over for shipbuilding.
You know what I always think is amazing is if you go on a cruise ship, for example, and just when you're standing there and you look up at the size and the magnitude of the thing and how many people it took to put that together and build that, and then how long it'll last and how many people will enjoy the opportunity to be on a ship, it's incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw the QE2 numerous occasions. And just after she was being launched and she was being fitted out, my father's company had the contract for all the signage in the QE2. So I actually got the privilege of being shown around her before she was officially brought into commission, and was presented with various bits and pieces from her as well. She was just absolutely mind-boggling. And when you were standing down at the foot of this ship, when she was out of the water, looking up, it was it was just jaw-dropping. I mean, you couldn't even start to describe, how you're just dwarfed by this giant leviathan of steel. It was quite incredible. The singer and comedian Billy Connolly, who actually I know, I used to get Christmas cards from him up until recently, but Billy Connolly, he was brought up in the Clyde shipyard, so he was a welder in the John Brown yard itself. So he worked on some of these famous ships.
And the other thing that's amazing to me, in addition to the ships, when you think about bridges, because bridges have to open for the ships, people lose their lives building those bridges. I don't think that people really even understand and comprehend the whole process, not just the financial commitment, but literally human lives are lost.
Oh yes, I mean in the shipbuilding industry, in particular back then, because we didn't have the health and safety people breathing down your neck and so on. I mean, they took enormous risks, absolutely incredible risks. I mean, all engineering feats, cost lives. And you see, I mean, there's photographs which frequently turn up of the building of the skyscrapers in New York, where they're sitting out in a beam suspended in the middle of nowhere, several hundred feet above ground, so casually playing cards or having their lunch or a cup of coffee or whatever. I mean, these guys have got no fear, and that was it. The cost in human life was actually quite considerable in these things, in particular in the shipbuilding industry as well. So it's a thing. We have to remember just how much did this ship cost, and we're not just talking about pounds and dollars.
Absolutely. And we do have some photographs that we're going to be sharing. And one of them is a crane. And I just wanted to mention, I remember when I was in corporate that I would travel to New York frequently, and you can look up and see a building that's already completed. And then there's a giant crane, or I don't know, on the 70th floor. So they can make the building even taller. And you think, how did that crane even get up there? It's incredible.
Well, I think of that big tower they built in Dubai, which is half a mile high. I mean, it was so high they couldn't get water up to the there just weren't pumps big enough to cope with pumping water up to the past I think about 2/3 of the way up the building. So it's just absolutely mind-blowing the size of structures that they have now. The Titan crane in Glasgow, there's two big cranes. There's the Titan crane, but further up there's the Finniston crane, which is virtually a duplicate of the Titan crane. And the Finniston crane was built to lift steam trains and steam engines over to load them onto ships to send around the world, because not only was the Clyde famous for building ships, but it was also very famous for building steam engines as well. And steam locomotives from the Clyde have been found all over the world. And in fact, I remember about 20 years ago, there was a team setting about to try and return a steam engine that they'd uncovered in Patagonia, and they wanted to bring it back to Scotland. It's not arrived yet, as far as I'm aware, but these steam engines are everywhere. And you often see names like John Brown or J. Ingalls and so on machinery in all corners of the world as well, generators and pumps and goodness knows what, all over the place. Africa, there's lots and lots of them.
Let's take a look at this one photograph of the Titan crane. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yes, well, it was the first electrically operated crane and the first of its type in the world, and the largest as well. And they haven't got the full dimensions of it, but the height of it must be well over 120 feet high. You can see at the the left-hand end of it there, the stubby end. It looks like a garage or a shed built on the top, which was the crane operator's cabin and where everything was done from. I mean, nowadays the cranes, you've got television cameras and monitors and so on, so they can see exactly where the hook is and where it's going. Didn't have that in those days. I mean, a lot of it was done by guesswork. And, you're talking about shifting a huge amount of kit around there. So that shed gives a pretty good idea of, you can imagine the height of a man against that shed, looking out one of the windows, and then look at the height of the overall height of the crane. I mean, just getting up to that in the morning, if your shift starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, it'll take you an hour to get up there. So you've got to start a bit earlier. And then you've got to get down again, and in all weathers as well. So there's no fancy lifts to go up there. There is now that structure at the side there as a lift where people can go up. But before that, you had to climb that ladder. And on a cold, icy day, when there was ice hanging on the rungs of that ladder, it could be a pretty dangerous job to do.
And Simon, just because we were talking about cranes in New York, which are obviously they can move them from one building to the next, the crane that we're seeing here, this is not mobile. This is steadfast.
Oh no, that's well and truly bolted to the ground, that one. But then, I mean, the radius of the swing there will reach just about any part of that fitting out dock. So once the ship had been launched, then it would be maneuvered with tugs round into that dock there where the crane is, and then they could do the fitting out. And the crane itself would be used for for heavy items going in, like the engines, the boilers, lifting on and off the funnels, putting on superstructure, the bridge work, and so on as well. Actually, the bridge would be quite light in comparison, but the engines and the boilers are really, really heavy things. So it's capable of lifting 150 tons, which is pretty big amount of weight.
And is there a crane operator or 2 or 3 or 10 that are in the crane, or is it done through computers remotely? How does that work?
No, they didn't have computers back in those days. Absolutely no way. They didn't even have telephone connection up to the top. They had to effectively shout, and that was their means of communication. But the crane operator would get a brief of what he was to do each day, and they'd just get on with it. And it would take probably 2 or 3 people working the crane to get it done right. You'd have the winchman, you'd have the crane master, who would be the one overseeing. And of course, you can see there's along the top of the gantry there's fencing, so they could walk in and out along there just to make sure that it was being dropped in the right place. So it was, in those days, computers didn't exist. So, it had to be done by ingenuity as much as anything else. And just, I mean, the fact of building that crane as well, it is a colossal task.
And I imagine that position of being a crane operator would pay very well.
Yeah, the wages weren't great in those days. Standard-wise as to what they are now. The general standard of living was quite hard. They didn't have the luxuries that they've got now. And with the shipyards as well, they sort of took over the area. I mean, Clydebank is quite a big area on the west side of Glasgow, and the ships, the big ones, the likes of the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth and so on, when they were being built, the bow of the ship overhung the road, and it was almost butting up against the first houses, or the tenement buildings as they called them. It was Scotland's equivalent to high rise. It'd be maybe 4 stories high, and that would be it. You don't get them bigger than that in Scotland in those days. So the ship would be almost, sitting in your house, really. I mean, it was butted right up against it because they needed the space, and that's what the priority was. The houses then were they were very small, and you get a large family living in 2 or 3 rooms, but they were a pretty happy lot, and there was a great community spirit in Clydebank, and that community spirit, strangely, it still lives today. It's an extraordinary place. I mean, Clydebank is, although it ostensibly is part of Glasgow, it's not really part of Glasgow. And I remember during the war years of the Second World War, my mother signed up to assist in the fire service, and she was involved in trying to put out the fires during the Clydebank Blitz. And as I say, with Clydebank during the war years, there was more tonnage of bombs dropped in Clydebank than there was in London through the whole war. So it was a pretty tough area, really tough time. And even today, you can still see gaps where there had obviously been buildings at some stage and they've been made into some parkland now, or just open spaces, or there's supermarkets been built there, or light industrial estates or whatever. But no, Clydebank took a serious hammering. There was a heavy loss of life there.
I'm impressed by how much knowledge you have, Simon. It's incredible. And you took the time to bring some photographs as well. Can we talk a little bit about these?
Yes, there we are. There's the CSS Robert E. Lee, which is that was built John Brown Yard in Glasgow for the Confederacy as a blockade ship, and it's she's quite an old girl, that one. I don't think she exists anymore.
All right, let's take a look at this one.
Now this is the RMS Lusitania, and that's her propellers. Four propellers, could shift this ship along at a very, very quick rate. The transatlantic crossings, it's famous for the blue riband, which goes to the fastest crossing of the Atlantic from New York. And the Lusitania, she got it, and then the Aquitania, her sister, got it. The Queen Mary got it, and then the QE2, she had it for a long time. Richard Branson got it. I think Richard Branson maybe still holds the record. He didn't sail a big ship across, but he sailed a very powerful boat, and he shaved quite a lot of time off the transatlantic crossing. One of his crew that he had there is a friend of mine, Bill from down the Clyde. Bill is a living legend. He's known as the Bionic Man because he's got 2 new knees. What else has he got? He's got new this, new that, and so on. The airport security guys have a heck of a time when he goes on holiday. But one of the most knowledgeable people in sailing, in particular in the yachting world, but also very knowledgeable in shipbuilding in the Clyde, and really a highly skilled craftsman as well. Varnish work on a yacht. It's lovely to see this incredible varnish work done on a yacht. Bill has got it down to an art. He showed me how to do it. And so any yacht I have or had, I'm currently yachtless, which is tragedy, but any varnish work.
It sounds so sad. I'm yachtless.
It's the first time in my life I've been without a yacht.
How long has it been?
Oh, far too long now, about 4 years. I think the last one I had was, I was living in the south of France for 4 years, doing consultancy work there, and I couldn't find a decent enough house to buy. So I bought a big yacht instead and lived on that. And it was actually a lot more luxurious than most houses, probably more luxurious than where I'm living now. We wanted for nothing, with air conditioning in each cabin and running hot and cold water and, washing machines and dishwashers, you name it, it was all there. But prior to that, I've had 2 ex-Olympic race yachts, and I raced those boats passionately and very competitively as well. I was fortunate enough to be able to get good sponsors, which meant I could race through the European Championships in Lake Garda in Italy and in France and all over the UK as well. Loved it. I started sailing when I was 4.5 years old. Gone sideways ever since, I think, was basically the answer to that.
So is there another yacht in your future?
Oh, I mean, I never say never. It's definitely, I've got to get one. It's, it's like you're a duck out of water. It's just a very bizarre feeling. The web feet are getting dried out now. I think something's got to be done about that.
And you mentioned about the yacht that you lived on was very luxurious. So would you stay in, I don't know what it's called, at the dock or for the most part?
Yeah, we were in a marina.
Marina.
I kept her in a marina in the south of France. And so I mean, everything was laid on. We got all the electricity we needed, the running water, all the rest of it. It was absolutely fantastic and very, very comfortable as well. And in the marina, in the winter months were a bit quiet, but in the summer months there were quite a few boats on the same pontoon that it was on, and we became great friends with them all. We're still in contact with them as well. It was baptism of fire and a great immersion in the French language. So because all the people, barring one on the pontoon, they were all French and had no English whatsoever. And so my French was very schoolboy French, but I soon sorted that out. And, so now it's quite useful. Doing consultancy work over there, I suppose you've got to be able to speak the language to a certain degree. So it was a lovely, lovely time living there, and all the more comfortable because of the yacht. She was called Jeepie. I bought her from a couple who were from Belgium, and they'd kept it down there. And she was almost brand new. I think it was about 2 years old, and she had had everything you could possibly imagine for comfort on her. And it's nice being able to go to sail around to Saint-Tropez for the weekend or into Monaco and so on. And it was a very pleasant lifestyle as well.
Sounds extremely glamorous and romantic. And I have a question for you. So with the yacht being named as it was, could the next person change the name, or does the name always stay with the yacht or the boat?
I'm quite a superstitious person in many respects, and I don't believe in changing the name of a boat. It's supposed to be unlucky to do that. Having said that, people that I sold the boat to changed the name, and that's it. I can still track her through the AIS, which is an automated system tracking system where you can keep an eye on boats all over the world. And so I can still see where they're going with her and so on. But they seem to be spending most of their time tied up in the marina. They're not adventurous sailors like I am, I think.
Well, thanks for sharing that about the name. That makes a lot of sense. We do have some more visuals. Let's take a look.
Yes, that's the Queen Elizabeth under constructions. The Queen Elizabeth, not to be confused with the QE2. This is the original Queen Elizabeth, and was launched by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And she had two funnels. She was built for Cunard, very fast and very luxurious liner of her day. And she sadly was sold from Cunard to a company, and she went to Hong Kong. She was going to be a school of some description at some stage and visitor attraction. But when she was being fitted out in Hong Kong in the harbour, she caught fire, and that sadly was the end of her. So the last time I think the Queen Elizabeth appeared was in one of the Bond movies with Roger Moore. And it was a sort of a setup of the MI5 or MI6 offices and so on. They had all the high-tech gadgetry in this office. That was an angle like that. But yes, no, that was a very sad end for the Queen Elizabeth. Oh, you.
What exactly happened to her?
She went on fire. I wouldn't like to see the insurance claim on it, and whether the insurance claim actually paid out, because there was a lot of controversy about it. Was it an accident, or was it done? So, and I think there's still ongoing inquiries into that one yet. And that's after, must be 30, 40 years since she burnt down.
Did she burn to the ground? To the water?
She burnt to the sea. Yes.
Sea, thank you.
Yes. And she's sort of settled on the bottom in Hong Kong Harbor now.
Okay.
Very sad to see.
That is very sad. Here's another photograph. What's this one?
This is the grand lady of the sea. This is the Queen Mary, and she had a glittering career. She was during the war years. She was used as a troop carrier. In fact, my father came back from Italy after the Battle of Cassino. Came back from Italy on the Queen Mary. And he said, she was far from being comfortable in those days. Built as a troop carrier, she was stripped out of everything and just painted battleship grey right throughout. And she was the only ship that she did a lot of transatlantic, bringing American troops across the Atlantic during the war. And she was the only ship she didn't need to have an escort with her, because she was so fast. There was no German U-boat could catch up with her. She was very, very quick. She won, of course, the coveted Blue Ribbon Trophy as well. So now she's, become quite a tourist attraction in Long Beach in California, in Florida. And she's, a lot of people have mixed feelings about that, mixed emotions, but it's nice to see that she's still afloat. And she's a great heritage and a great sort of advert to the heritage of the Clyde shipbuilding of the past.
Where in Florida is she?
Long Beach.
Long Beach. I don't know of Long Beach.
Or is that California? I've got East and West mixed
I think it's there's a Long Beach, California.
That's it. That's where she is. Yeah. Sorry.
I was like, okay, I'm going to go there.
We get something wrong.
And this is the last photograph we have for today.
And this is the famous QE2, who superseded them all. Again, got the coveted blue ribbon as well, which she took off the Queen Mary. And the QE2, I mean, she was a very, very far advanced liner for her day. And she saw service as well as a troop carrier with the Falklands War, carrying our guys across from the UK and Southampton down to South Georgia and across the Falklands as well. And again, a remarkably quick ship. She's beautifully fitted out, and they are trying to keep her as she was as much as possible. But she's in Dubai. It would have been lovely to see her coming back to the Clyde, but it's an interesting angle of pose that as she's sliding down the slipway. At first, she didn't want to go, and the Queen, of course, the Queen Elizabeth as QE2, when she was launching her, the champagne bottle hit the boat, and they're all expecting the cheer went up, and nothing happened. She wasn't going to go. So down below, they had all sorts of people getting into an absolute tiz with hydraulic rams and so on, trying to give her a push, get the shoulder to it and give her a shove. So once she went down the slip, then to the water and so on, she went right across the other side of the bank and set up well, it wasn't so much a bow wave, it was a stern wave, but the wash went right over the side of the river bank. A lot of people were there watching, including my father and myself as well. We got very wet, I can assure you. So that was it. And then she went down to Greenock to be fitted out the final stages. She was a beautiful, beautiful line, very, very far advanced for her day and so on. And it's a shame she didn't come back to the Clyde.
Another fascinating story. You were right there.
Yes, that's it. You're man on the spot, reporting live from Greenock.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes for a great story. You're right there where the action is.
Well, it was just, I mean, it was a privilege to be able to see the progress of this ship, because we used to go up to Glasgow with my parents quite frequently, and we could see the QE2 being built. We really saw her from all the stages of her construction, just after the keel was laid, and then gradually taking shape as a ship. And then right through to the day of launching. Of course, we got ringside seats because of my father's position with his company doing all the signage. And you know, it would actually probably been better off if we'd been at the back of the queue rather than at the front, getting a full soaking with very dirty Clyde water. And you know, to see her progressing all the way through to the day she, you know, actually slipped her moorings and went off down the Clyde on her first sea trials. So it was just, you know, it was a privilege to see something like that.
Well, it's been an absolute privilege to have you here today and enlightening us in so many ways. And I know this took a lot of time and preparation. Thank you, Simon.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been good fun today. I mean, even though I'm on my talk, it's almost as if there's an echo in this place because, you know, I mean, we're the only ones here, and it's the 90th birthday as well. So
what should we do to celebrate, Simon?
Well, I don't know. I'd have a cake. I'm going to do that. I shall have a dram in a wee while, I think.
So when you say you're going to have cake because you are a celebrity chef, what would you whip something up, or you have something already there in the house?
Yeah, we did a nice lemon drizzle cake the other day. Yeah, it's nice and moist. That with a bit of cream over it, just perfect. Yeah, ideal. But anyway, to round things off, then yeah, I'm just sort of thinking, we've gone through history, so we've got to look back at on this day. And on this day, 1760, King George III became King of Great Britain. Now, thereby hangs yet another tale. My great grandfather was Lord Robert Clive of India. And he was, you know, a very famous person, and he was the Viceroy of India. So he came back just very soon after George III had been crowned king, and he was having dinner with the king at Buckingham Palace, and the king gave him this plate afterwards. So
Beautiful.
This plate is from the royal dinner service. So they're missing a plate. They know where it is.
What is your address?
I'm not telling. So that's George III, 1760, became King of Great Britain on this day. And then in 1780, John Hancock became the first governor of Massachusetts. 1955, the first domestic microwave oven went on sale. I don't like using them. But for famous birthdays, today in 1881 in Malaga in Spain, Pablo Picasso was born. So there we go. So there
you have it.
That brings us up to date for you know, on this day.
On this day, thank you very much. We do have a comment from Norm's Triad Publications. Happy 90th anniversary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norns. Do I look that old? Don't answer it.
No follow-up comment needed. Thank you.
Yeah,
I do have a question for you.
Yes.
So you mentioned about the microwave, and obviously, as I've said before, we know you're a celebrity chef. You had a cooking show here as well with Ricky. Do you use the microwave when you're preparing a meal, or do you just try to avoid it at all costs?
I try to avoid it personally. They're very convenient for doing odds and ends. I mean, they're very good for doing fish, you know, because they cook right through. So fish, it's great. Vegetables, okay, and so on. But yeah, I try and avoid nuclear devices as best I can. I'm a bit old school, like to do it the traditional way.
Now, and I actually have this in the freezer, I have some frozen sea bass. So if you were going to prepare sea bass, would you defrost it in a microwave, or would you let it sit out and defrost by itself?
I'd let it defrost by itself.
Okay.
And, you know, I've tried defrosting microwaves, and that's one bit of technology that just seems to go way over my head. It never works properly for me. Always finishes out being partly cooked. Sea bass is lovely, and you know, if you've got a whole sea bass, something about, you know, that size, then you do just you know, stuff the cavity with almonds and mushroom and maybe some dill or some basil, and then cake it encrust it all with use salt and egg white mixed together, and put a whole crust around this with the salt, so the sea bass completely encased in it, and then pop it in the oven for 20 minutes at about 170 for 20 minutes. It comes out, and then you crack open the crust, and the fish inside is delicious. One of the nicest fish you could possibly eat, especially done that way.
Okay, I'm drooling over here. Just subsequent follow-up question about that, because I think I'm going to be doing that. So you take egg white, and
Yeah.
from how many eggs?
Just enough to bind the salt. So you need quite a bit of salt. Whack it in, and then add the egg white, and you might need to use 2 eggs depending on the size of the fish, but you know, 1 should be about enough, and just make it into almost like a sort of crunchy type of paste, so it'll stick to the fish, and then just encrust the whole fish in the salt, and then bake it in the oven, and say about 20 minutes comes out. It's so delicious, it really is. And it's as soon as that crust cracks open, and you just get this lovely smell wafting across. And of course, sea bass is such a lovely white, almost translucent flesh as well. But if you've got the fillets or fillets of sea bass, then just pan fry it in a bit of oil and butter, starting off doing it skin side down, and a really strong heat. And it only takes about a minute or so on each side, and that's it, and it's done. But a really strong heat on the skin side makes the skin nice and crispy, and it's delicious. The skin then, you know, it just chop. They're really lovely.
So in that case, if we have the fillets, then it's just oil and butter.
Oil and butter, yes. Don't just cook in butter alone, because the butter will burn. So use, you know, equal quantities oil and butter.
Okay, I know what I'm doing tonight. Thank you. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, we miss our team members here for the show, but I really enjoyed this anniversary episode, spending it with you and having you enlighten us in so many areas. What is a final comment or thought that you'd like to share for our audience today, and how can people reach you?
Well, it's one of my favorite ones, I think, of the past, you know, and it's my favorite saying, quotation, whatever you want to call it as well. But the sky is not the limit when there are footprints on the moon. Always remember that. Go for it. Like we talked earlier on, to be a presenter, just go for it.
Go for it. And do you want people to reach out to you via your email or your website?
Yeah, you've got the email there, which is macdonaldsimon@ymail.com. So it's the letter Y, not a G. And the website is simon-macdonald.com. That's an easy one.
All right. Thank you very much, Simon. And thank you to our audience who's watching live or on the replay, wherever you are in the world. Our next show is coming up. It's Global Social Entrepreneurs. So do stay tuned for that with Ann Scotland. And Simon and I will be back next week for another episode. As we close out, of course, we're going to hear from the lovely DIANN FLOYD BOEHM. And then we'll see you again next time. Bye, everyone. Bye, Simon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, I'm children's author DIANN FLOYD BOEHM, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and radio because I love positive messages, and who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.